get rid of those galaxies. That was solve most of the problems.
For a few years.
But my family will come here and visit in the summers and stuff.
I haven't heard any stories.
It's horrible.
Rejects.
It's something I don't buy into, and I probably would if I didn't
Grow with the
Yeah.
Tennessee.
Then you have
we do a lot of
better
underground
structure,
utilities,
you
so that's
appreciate it more, and you gotta build the environment.
She's from Tennessee. She's from Nashville.
Only thing coming down there is game, man. You gotta get kicked out of the ISD.
I was going to college in Alabama.
Then they go there and steal.
Christian colleges. We have one out in
You want a water?
Yeah, I think another week.
Want another water?
Southwestern Ag. They have the Burton Academy.
You want any waters?
And I went to the one college in Alabama.
Need anything for that?
No, sir. You loan me $20.
I'll see what I can do. Hello?
Ellen sold me my house.
That was originally part of one of our farms.
Well, I knew that when I read
Been
the
bubbling.
legal
Y'all don't do a lot of ginger ale out here.
and when I got it
I
from,
can order all that at my night meals when I do
you know,
something.
Imagine this.
nice car.
Good up. And yeah, you say Coca-Cola is
A bunch of brothers and sisters that live all over Chester. And all up and down Houston Street Road.
I promise.
Because two of them still live on that street. The daughter or the sister or whatever.
I'm not gonna deny it, you're right.
But Needham's.
Oh,
Needham's.
yeah.
Yeah, he
low water. He pulled all the toilets.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Once a month is okay.
Oh, really?
Remember the RTC?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take it. I went to the RTC and I told them, I said, here, I'll buy this house for this amount.
My kitchen.
You don't need those.
Okay, good. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good evening, everyone. Looks like everybody's had a chance to get their food and get situated, so we will go ahead and call this joint work session to order for the City Council of City of Lancaster at 6:42.
And I, Queenie, call the meeting in order for the planning and zoning at 6:42 as well for today.
All right, so Mark, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. We are going to continue where we left off on Tuesday night. We have a full evening ahead of us. For tonight, on Tuesday night, we completed an overview of a lot of the background materials that we've been looking at that are informing the process. We talked to you a little bit about that process we're going through that has a whole lot of focus on the characteristics of what's available in this part of the Dallas-Fort Metroplex and specifically Lancaster. We talked about a lot of the physical opportunities that are available to the community, natural assets that are out there and some of those types of things and how that informed the process. And then we talked to you a little bit about some of the stakeholder feedback that we had been hearing, and we're trying to build upon that feedback with some specific questions that we gave out to you in those workbooks that you've been working on over the past week or so. So following the work that was done on Tuesday night with the vision and key themes, in just a moment, Karen is going to take over, and she's going to do a little bit of a recap to make sure we heard you correctly and we've documented the right things moving forward, the big ideas that came out of that. Not that we won't be taking in every one of those ideas, but there were some common threads that started to come through that. And then tonight, we want to continue looking at the findings and insights so far with a focus on the diverse, strong employment base, Bill Cunningham is with us tonight from Ricker Cunningham, so that he will be able to help us focus in on some of the aspects of the employment base and the economic opportunities available in Lancaster. Desirable multi-generational housing, which was one of the things that we heard from you folks multiple times on Tuesday night. And then city assets, amenities, and investments. And we're sure you have several ideas related to that. And then finally, we gave out a handout to you at the end of the last meeting related to some of the performances of the scenarios that were developed in the community-wide charrette. We have Rob Ray with us here tonight from Kimley Horn. Rob is the mastermind behind that exercise and the keeper of the data, so he really can give us quite a more detailed overview of some of those findings and help us through a discussion on what are the things that are important and what are the aspects of a successful scenario that we should be shooting for as we start to combine some of those ideas. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Karen, and we'll continue on.
Thank you, Mark. We were really thrilled with the discussion and the ideas that we heard on Tuesday night. And between then and now, what we've tried to do is put together some of those ideas as kind of a recap to come back to you and say, you know, does this start to reflect what you talked about? And is this the right direction? And then we're going to move into the other items that Mark was describing. I'm going to suggest that we focus tonight on, when we get to those other items, on the one about diverse employment base, because I think that really leads to and drives some of those other issues. I know that you got into some of that discussion on Tuesday, and Bill has been able to look into some of the questions that y'all had. So we want to really concentrate on that one out of the set of findings and insights that you see on the list here. Okay, and again, just as a reminder, our objectives for the two workshops together: review the research and stakeholder input, which we pretty much did last time, discuss major issues and opportunities, which we began doing and are continuing, and really concentrate on shared agreement on the most important ideas that we should be pursuing in this process. And provide whatever other direction that you want us to be following as we move into the next steps of the details of the comprehensive plan itself and that implementation approach that we talked about at the end of the meeting on Tuesday night. So that's where we'll be trying to focus this evening, and we're going to be mindful of the time and try to cover quite a bit of ground tonight as we did on Tuesday. In terms of the findings and insights so far, as you recall, a lot of our discussion on Tuesday was really focused on a vision and key themes. And at the end of that session, we had come up with 4 major points that we thought were part of the vision, and the idea that those were all interrelated with one another. So what we have tried to do here is put those down in writing, and we've just put this together today, so this is not in your workbook, but I will read it to you. And it's a draft, so it's just a working document to see if we're on the right track to reflect what you all discussed on Tuesday. And so the statement that's here, and I don't know if we've got I guess we do have the lights off in there, don't we? Our vision for Lancaster's future is based on success in 4 interrelated areas. Is that better to see?
Yes.
Okay, great. 1, it is built on our community's existing assets. And I've got on the next 2 slides some details underneath each one of these items. So I wanted to first kind of say, here's the list. Did we hear you correctly on that? Secondly, it creates Lancaster as a destination. Thirdly, that the vision is the community's educational excellence supports its people and its businesses. And finally, that the diverse choices in Lancaster appeal to people of all ages and businesses in a variety of industries. So at kind of the top level, we tried to put down on paper what we thought we heard from you in terms of those 4 themes and the idea that they are all interrelated with one another. Now let me go ahead, if I might, and show you the kind of bullets that we think we heard underneath each one of those, and see if we're hearing y'all correctly. So under the topic about our vision is built on the community's existing assets, the ideas that we've noted here, one of those is the historic character of the community. One of those is the people who are here. One of those is the existing neighborhoods and the existing infrastructure that y'all have invested in. and one of those is the plans that we've already created but we haven't finished yet. So those all are part of what we think we heard from y'all in terms of the existing assets that we need to build on. The second bullet here says, creates Lancaster as a destination. And what we think we heard from y'all was it should be a destination every day as people are coming here to their jobs or staying here to work if they live here. That it should be a frequent destination for things like going to restaurants, going to entertainment, going to the healthcare facilities and those kinds of destinations here. And also for the big events, the kind of larger things that Commissioner Earl was mentioning in terms of more major destination kind of things as well. And then the third bullet about educational excellence, the bullets that we thought we heard from you, that vision of the future is an ISD that offers quality education and very desirable specific programs. And we heard a little bit about those the other night. That there are other quality choices also available, charter schools being one of those examples, and that there's education and training for the adults that are looking for their jobs or looking to expand their jobs. Fourth point here, the diverse choices in Lancaster appeal to people of all ages and businesses in a variety of industries. The points that we think we heard from you there, one, we want that the kids who grow up here are going to choose to come back here and make this their home, that seniors who live here can choose to stay here because they've got the services and the facilities and all that they need, that young adults and families also can find what they want and what they need in this community, that businesses are offering jobs at all different levels, different types and skills of jobs, that people can live, work, and play here. And I think it's very important that public transportation is here that's helping people reach the places in Lancaster, within this community, and also the places in other parts of the region. So what we think we heard from you about the vision and the sort of four themes, these were sort of some of the highlights. The last thing I want to share with you, and then I'd like to get your feedback and your help in understanding how well we've captured things, is that there were several steps that we talked about at the end of the session on Tuesday. A comment that was made that says, we, meaning y'all, must be Lancaster's biggest cheerleaders, that if there are concerns or there are misperceptions or things, we need to be honest about getting those out on the table, figuring out where things stand, communicating and focusing on those, and that we as the city should take the lead on building a team with folks like the ISD and the Chamber, so that we've got that team of cheerleaders for this community. So we heard that, and in our feeling was that that's not so much a piece of the vision as it's a how to go about doing the vision. So we've kind of put it here separately. The second point was one that came up throughout your discussion, and that was the idea of the special focus on wellness, the idea of your medical district becoming a top regional provider by being focused and very specialized on something, and that will not only be a good business, but that it will bring in desirable kinds of jobs, and it will bring in people who will in turn want to live here and add to that diversity. And that the idea that the specialty should relate to the needs in this community, which among those being wellness and being the treatment of some of the conditions like diabetes and heart disease and so forth, that might be a focus of that part of wellness. And thirdly, that this planning process and the result, the plan that comes out of it, should really be a foundation for unified action to get things done. We talked at the very end of the meeting about how do we actually make this happen, and so we felt like it was important to note the idea that we should come up with a unified direction out of this planning process, and that from there, that needs to translate into political will for action and investment to follow through and carry things out, and that unified vision and unified action needs to be communicated out to the folks in the community as well, and to the other partner organizations. So in a kind of nutshell, that's what we tried to pull together to capture of your comments on Tuesday. So let me go back to that first bullet point as maybe a good starting point, and just ask for some feedback of how well did we capture what you said and what you may have thought about in the time since we last met together.
I think maybe you nailed it.
Yeah? Okay, people feel comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, good. And again, it says working draft on the top there. So as we continue on with our discussion, we might decide we want to change some of it. But hopefully that's a good kind of point for the start of the discussion this evening, and we'll continue moving forward then. Okay, so our first topic for this evening, diverse, strong employment base. This is the topic I would suggest that we probably will want to spend the most time on this evening. While I know that you've probably also got comments in your workbooks about the neighborhoods and housing, and also about the city assets, it seems to us that this one is really a kind of critical piece for all the rest of those. So we would hope to focus on this one for a good deal of the evening. And then, as Mark said, we want to make sure to have time at the end to talk about those scenarios. So a couple of the questions that we had identified in the workbooks to get this discussion started are the ones that are on the screen here. Before I ask y'all about your thoughts on these issues, which this is under Task C, and it was under our tab for Tuesday evening, since we had originally had it as part of the Tuesday night discussion. So it's under, I think that's tab 2. Tab 2. But before we get into that discussion, there were a couple of questions, one question in particular that came up on Tuesday, and we wanted to ask Bill to check on it for us, and that was the question about the median household income for Lancaster. We had questions, the number that was up on the screen was lower than what you had thought it was, and we talked about how it was for the trade area. So I want to ask Bill. Bill has investigated that for us since Tuesday, so I want to ask him to update you on that information, and then we'll go into the questions that are on the page here.
Thanks, Karen. When we did our market presentation a few months back, we identified for you a larger trade area from which businesses in Lancaster could draw their potential customers. That larger trade area included a good portion of South Dallas, areas to the east. Didn't go as far west as perhaps a larger trade area would. But when we looked at the demographics of that trade area, that's where we came up with a median household income at about $45,000. When we went back and looked at, for the city of Lancaster specifically, your current estimated median household income is about $51,000. So, and then the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex as a whole is at about $54,000. So again, you guys are kind of right between higher than the trade area that we identified, but lower than the Metroplex overall. And again, I think we made the point that when businesses look at a community, they don't necessarily confine their analysis to your city boundaries or any community city boundaries. They're really looking at, what is the potential draw in terms of drive times, distances. Those are the kinds of things that they look at. So they tend to draw a very irregular trade area boundary around a community rather than just use those community demographics.
And that's that $45,000?
Yes, exactly. So what that tells us is that Lancaster is probably within that trade area is at the high end of the income range. Right. You have a concentration of households that are at the higher end of that range, but you're surrounded by lower income households.
So
yes, sir.
You came up with that 45,000. Where did you get it from? Because the last time I see you have 51,000 right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's for the city of Lancaster. That's just the city, people who live within the city. The 45,000 is a much bigger area around the community.
And see, the last time we had a administrator here left, well, as you, it was 50,000. And I had it, and I was a little disappointed when it came back down. You said the median income was 45, so I wondered where did you get that number?
Well, those are census data numbers. They're also, though, and again, I think we described the methodology in our first market discussion, but that there are companies, forecasting companies, that take that 2010 census information and project it forward based on, you know, a number of different factors. So 2010 was probably pretty close, the city was pretty close to that 50,000. It's now gone up by about $2,000 over the last 4 years. Yes, sir.
Initially, you started your presentation by saying you grabbed a certain section of south of Dallas.
Yes.
Now, when you say South Dallas, are you talking Martin Luther King 2nd Avenue or Camp Wisdom, UNT? South Dallas?
Yeah, let's put it up.
It's-
I've got it up here on my computer, but
We can pull it up here on the screen so you can see exactly what area.
Yeah, I didn't think it reached that far up.
Loop 12 south.
Yeah, it's kind of south Loop,
It's
Loop
on
12.
south.
Oak Cliff.
It's in tab 5,
Yeah.
36?
And that income,
36, tab 5.
the reason why I said that income from a HMDA CRA data, that income is extremely high. And I've never heard $45,000 being that number there,
well, again,
consisting of those communities. If you looked at HMDA and CRA banking data, that number's a little higher. So I don't know if that's census 1999, census 2000, what census?
it's census 2010, and then as I said, there are companies like Claritas or Esri that take that 2010 census data and begin to push it forward. There's also the American Community Survey data, which is run by the Census Bureau. They do estimates every couple of years. So, you know, they may do a 2012 number, a 2014 number. Now, you know, if you look at this particular trade area, and again,
It's got a lot of Ellis County.
you know, I think the point that we made when we initially showed this is that for every business or potential retailer or potential, you know, employer that comes to town and starts to look at, you know, how far they can draw their customers from, they're going to have their own trade area.
Right, so
You know,
it's,
so we tried to identify one that we thought would at least be a reflection of not only the city of Lancaster, but surrounding areas or communities that you might draw from. If you looked at, for example, a regional retailer, you know, like a Walmart, like a Sam's Club, like a Super Target, and they came to Lancaster and looked at a particular site, they may go 15 or 20 miles in any direction to kind of look at what the potential demographics or spending potential is for those residents. The other point I should make, and hopefully this speaks a little to your point, Mr. Earl, is that if you started to break this area down by census block or by census tract, by a much smaller area, I'm sure you're going to find areas that may have median household incomes,
Much
you
higher.
know, 75 or 80,000, but you're also going to have some at the other end of the scale that may be 25 or 30. So that's a smoothed over number, but again, you know, that's what a potential retailer, potential business, the first cut that they do is this kind of demographic analysis.
so I think in the end, council, what happens is, we can be helped or hurt, you know, given what goes on in that trade area. Because clearly there's some areas that push the number up, but then you got other areas that are dragging it down. And so what we have to try to work on is what can we do to attract, you know, career opportunities and people that will stay here and keep pushing that number higher and higher.
It's really telling the right story about your
Yeah.
community to the right audience, you know, and those audiences change.
Yeah, and even if you look at Lancaster proper, I mean, we've got some. It's kind of interesting because you've got a segment that, you know, in terms of when you compare us to the Metroplex, you know, we have a higher percentage of households that earn over $100,000 than the average of the Metroplex, but we also have a higher average of people that earn less you know, at the bottom end of the income range. So you've got kind of you've got this income gap that makes it interesting to tell your story, if you will, you know.
So does that answer the question that y'all were interested in from the other night in terms of the income levels?
And that's what drives the retails, people to look upon us.
Very much so.
Your Targets, your,
Yeah, they're looking, you know, honestly, sorry about that. Honestly, retailers are looking for a concentration of spending potential. So if a retailer looks at an area or that has a number of neighborhoods that are very dense neighborhoods, you know, lots of people in a concentrated area at a certain income level, that's as attractive to them as a broader area that has, you know, less density, maybe higher incomes. They're looking for, you know, how many dollars, potential dollars spent can I get in the closest distance to my store?
Well, you have to also look at the reality of the type of retailer that comes to a particular market. I keep hearing Target, 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 but if you look at Walmart, Walmart has put 6 Walmart facilities within a 60-mile radius because not of these factors that you're talking about, but they are the factors of what is sold in Walmart that the market wants to buy regularly. And they buy it so much that Walmart is willing to put another location within 5 miles of each other, another location within 8 miles of each other, and another location within 10 miles of each other. And it is because of those types of goods and services and products that that market will buy 24 hours a day. And the Walmart staff has said the southwest section of Dallas County has higher sales than the northern sections of the county. So Target is I don't know, I guess Target is the face of what folks are talking about, but if you look at Walmart's modus operandi and how they are doing what they are doing, they have decided that this market wants these goods at this price, and we're gonna flood the market with that, and they will come.
And Walmart.
So it's not, I don't know if it's so much as what you're.
Well, and again, you know, Walmart is looking at demographics. They're responding to demographics. They know better than probably any retailer on earth who their customer is, as you said, what their buying habits are, what their income levels are, what their family size is. I mean, they do extensive,
And what they're doing is, what does that demographic want to buy?
Yes.
Not what does that demographic's income is, because if that was the case, then Neiman's would be here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Walmart has said, we will put them so close to one another that the market will still come from Cedar Hill, Waxahachie, what have you, right on top of each other, because we have exactly what it is that they want.
That household income number is the first cut. That's the first step in a long, detailed analysis that these retailers go through. And you're absolutely right. They get down to the retail category, you know, how many potential bags of potato chips are these people in this area gonna buy?
Or the style of clothing, or the style of what have you. They'll dummy down the jewelry, they'll, music, whatever.
Yep, absolutely. And so I think the, I think the lesson for any community is if you are in a position, if you want to change that initial perception, you know, if it's, whether it's income, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's household sizes, there are, you just have to use those numbers and use those demographics to tell the story that's going to appeal to whatever group you're targeting. And I think that's, that the example that I always think of in the southern metroplex is when DeSoto set out to do their town center project. And we were part of the team that had done some initial work for them in looking at their market and how they positioned themselves versus their neighboring communities. And they flat out told us, we're going to use Cedar Hills demographics to sell this multifamily project to a little bit higher income base so that we can get the higher rents that we associated with that project. The city had to put in a ton of money, a ton of public incentives, but it's been pretty successful. But it took something like that to change the market perception of DeSoto. So I mean, gosh.
I had a question about changing the perception and image. Our image is not too good being flooded with general dollar stores to me. And so what can we do to change that or help that? Because it's not any competition. Like you're saying about Walmart, we know what they'll buy, we'll just put them here. And so can we slow it down? And what we would have to do? I know it's a zoning thing, but we need to slow down if we're going to change the image. And I think that's a bad image for the city. That's the only department store we have. I'm saying department store, clothing store.
Again,
It's a Dollar General.
Yeah,
Can I just say something relative to that? I
Sure.
think
And
it's
I will answer.
and it is along those same lines, because I think it's about access, easy availability. And truly, if there are no other retailers
But
in the
that-
area,
Right.
then you seem to attract more of the same, which goes back to Walmart as well. But the other ideal is, as I look at this trade map area, and it's going toward, I guess, 45 and the opposite way of what, now, and this is not data, this is just my personal perception of where the spending habits are. Because there are not a lot of retailers going in that opposite direction. What my thought is just as DeSoto attracted Cedar Hill, we have to look at attracting those that are in DeSoto to come to Lancaster. So the whole mantra of build and they will come. So we have to kind of look at that and pull them over into our base.
Yeah. And I think you do that with a couple of things, and this speaks to your question as well. You do it by articulating your vision, which is what this process is all about. Through your comprehensive plan, through all of your planning documents, you follow that through all of your regulatory documents, and you send that message to the private sector, to the people who are going, the businesses that are going to come and implement your vision. You articulate that very clearly, that this is who we want to be, that this is where we're headed, these are the kinds of land uses we want, and then be ready at the end of the day to back it up with incentives, economic incentives that will convince somebody who, may look at initial demographics in this trade area and say, I can't make my numbers work with that level of spending potential, I have a gap. That's where cities and communities can step in and figure out how to fill that gap for them, and get them to make that initial investment.
And I think to kind of bring it back to home base, it really boils down to our collective efforts to try to attract, again, the career opportunities that are going to elevate those numbers. Because the reason why these retailers basically congregate is because they know that at this typical income level, we can be successful in their business ventures. But as we move that number up, they recognize that there will be less of an appeal in the community for that type of retailer. So, and then what happens is, when you start building your target area, you can pull more from, to your point, Sonia, from the west, where there are higher incomes, and lump that into our numbers as they get higher, and you can tell a much stronger story about why like a HEB, okay, would be a better choice of a grocery store chain in our community versus a Walmart. And look, we're not bashing Walmart.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't want
Not
anybody
at
to
all.
walk away
No.
thinking we're bashing Walmart.
Not doing that.
Yeah,
No.
but so, but those kinds of things are gonna drive the diversity in retail options as we're able to, work to try to bring, career opportunities that are higher paying in nature.
One last point on this, and I want you three to help me because you all are the experts here on this movement of entities and movement of developers and brands and what have you. When I moved to Dallas, Redbird Mall was the premier mall of the southern southwest section of Dallas County. There was no mall in Cedar Hill. You had Redbird Mall, and then you could drive to Hillsboro Outlet, and that was it between there. Now, the land where Lobius Murray's church is, he bought that land from the RTC. It was just raw land there. There was no one there but Lobius Murray on I-20. And then the same retailers at Redbird picked up and moved 6 miles to I-20, not to Lancaster I-20, nowhere else but to that section. That was all raw land. There was no Wells Fargo. There was no Bank of America. There was no, what's that all-you-can-eat place? Yeah. Huh? Furs. There was, none of that was there. And those retailers just picked up and left Camp Wisdom for whatever reason. Macy's, I think, is still there. But what drives that type of movement to help us as planners?
Dollars.
Was there some dollars not being spent there 6 miles away?
I think the short answer, and trust me, there's probably a very long answer to that question, but the short answer is those kinds of shopping centers that, kind of fade away.
But I don't think the city was pushing those guys to move from.
I don't think they were either.
Yeah, they weren't doing that.
They were following, initially, they were probably following demographics, that they saw where growth was going, perhaps the neighborhood around the existing mall.
Because those customers are coming from our communities, our
Yeah,
cities.
yeah.
To that
Yep.
strip right there between.
Yep.
But the trend now is not the malls at that, were the traditional things, but they want the walkable, areas like the uptowns and the, Cedar Hill, where people are able to park and walk and not be on the interior malls anymore. Those have really gone, you find those malls, you
And-
see them
and-
all over Dallas, it's happening.
To add to that, I was going to say, think back, Prestonwood Mall was a premier mall in North Dallas, and it ended up closing down because they couldn't get the volume. Valley View was a premier mall. It closed down. And we're doing some work in Frisco right now. Stonebriar Mall is the hot mall right now. And the city is already looking, saying, what are we going to do with that site when that mall closes? Because it's the trend. They don't last long term.
And the original shopping center of this whole area in Linwood is still surviving with a variety because of the fact they have transcended. They went downhill, but now they're back to the walkable scenario that everybody is wanting.
Yeah.
Highland Park, those older shopping centers
That-
have
and
come
that's-
back. That's the style now.
That's the style that they're wanting now.
There are a couple of almost like rules of thumb in the retail industry. One, we always say that retail changes its face about every 7 to 10 years. And, we've kind of seen this happen over the past 3 real estate cycles, that We went from the interior malls, we went to the town center, or lifestyle centers, we went through the big box craze. Now we're kind of coming back to really the town centers that were popular back in the 40s and 50s, those walkable centers as you described. I read a quote the other day in a retail industry magazine that just floored me, and there was an expert that had estimated that over 50% of the existing enclosed malls in the country would be essentially out of business within the next 5 years, over half of them. Now what do you do with that? What do you do with those giant shopping centers? Do you get out ahead of it and redevelop it and try to do something with it? But if trends continue, that was his contention, that over the next 5 years, we're going to see half of those. Again, retail is the hardest thing, the hardest land use to impact. The other thing that I was going to mention about the Redbird Mall was there are also, developer, investor relationships that have a huge impact on retail, has a huge impact on what tenants come to your community, because they all have relationships with different developers. So you almost have to pick the right developer before you get the right tenant to come along with them. So that may have played into the fact that they could get a better deal 6 miles away, or better land, or better location. So retail is tough. It is, and it's getting even tougher coming out of the recession, because all the old rules that seem to apply aren't there anymore.
Well, they're building them smaller, though, these retail boxes.
Way smaller. Way smaller.
And am I correct in saying that Walmart actually plans for their buildings to be depreciated, or they don't plan on being in that building any more than 20 years, 15 years?
Not even that long. Not even that long. But we actually had a Walmart representative tell us outright in a meeting up in the Denver market that the store that they were planning to depreciate the building in 7 years and move to their next location in 10 years. So, why they said that in front of the community that they were building the store in, but it's a reality of the way retailers do business. So
they pack up and leave, and then it's left behind?
They pack up and leave, and unfortunately, a lot of times, they will put a limitation on the building, essentially a deed restriction on the building, that another competitor can't come in and use that space. So it just sits.
Well, look at the situation, because our Walmart
That
came
chicken,
from the suburbs.
Yeah.
Hopefully that chicken won't come home to roost.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think part of the question, and I know we have these in a ABC order, but since we're talking about retail, let me suggest that we look at question F in our workbook on the diverse, strong employment base, because it's talking about some of what Bill has just started us into, and that's the question about there is a lot of change going on in retail, and that people are not shopping the way they used to. They go to a store to try things out, see how they feel, and so forth, and then they go home and order it online. And so the stores have a whole different style of how they do things and what they need and how much space they have and all that. But yet there's still this need for a place that people want to go and touch and feel the things. So that trend, and Bill, I don't know if you want to elaborate on it any more briefly, but the question for us, and the reason we pose this as one of your questions to think about in advance, is how can we think differently? Where are the places here in Lancaster that could be that place where people come to try the things out? And where might that be, where might that fit? So, Bill, do you want to summarize?
I will. I'll just elaborate a little bit on that trend. What we're really seeing, probably the hottest product right now in retail, other than the smaller stores that Karen alluded to, is the idea of fulfillment centers. And you guys have probably heard of this. There are some in the Metroplex where companies like Amazon and online retailers, they want to get their goods as close to their customers as possible.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe the things that they know about us as consumers. And to the point where, you know, Amazon's goal is to be able to deliver goods same day to people who order them. If you can just think about how amazing that is, you know, if they have to use drones, you know, whatever, that they're going to do that. So interestingly, that really has created demand for a more industrial type product. You know, fulfillment centers are essentially big warehouses, and they want to get them as close to their end customers as possible. So we're seeing Amazon come into communities looking for the same kind of attributes that logistics companies do. You know, they want to be on an interstate highway, they want to have access to a large population base. So it's funny that, you know, the retail trend is actually towards a more industrial type real estate product.
Kohl's has a center right across the highway
Yep.
in DeSoto.
Yep, and
Fulfillment center.
just recently, I think it was Williams-Sonoma bought a huge building in Arlington, 800,000 square feet, gigantic vacant building, and they're going to use that as their regional fulfillment center. So now, again, that, you know, that kind of a product comes with a whole different set of challenges. Do you really want, you know, huge warehouses that don't employ very many people in your community and probably don't generate the sales tax that, you know, stores do? But again, that's, you know, you're probably already in that market and you don't even know it because of your logistics.
We are.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm glad you touched on that subject, because just personally, I'm over the tractor-trailer lots, the warehouses out here, and I would like to know, how do we stop it? That's going back to Commissioner Barnes over here. How do we stop? And as the body that's sitting here right now that has control of that, how do we say no more? We want to beautify the place, not have these big boxes or these little mom and pop dollar stores or whatever. We don't want that anymore. We want to do bigger and better things to enhance the growth for the different income potential, the diversity. So how do we do that without being partial to anybody, you know?
Yeah. Well, and this is going to sound way oversimplified, and I don't mean it to be, but you know, as a community, you have to encourage the things that you want and discourage the things that you don't want. And the encouraging comes through economic incentives, you know, making it easier for the buildings and the businesses that you want in your community to come in. You know, remove whatever barriers they potentially see in your community. And on the discouraging side, that's where you do it through zoning, you do it through your regulatory documents, and those are the things, you know, hopefully that kind of fall after you've articulated that vision. First thing is, you know, you have to establish that vision and then be willing to say no to the people who come in that don't fit that vision. And that's hard to do.
Because why I say that is because these companies that's in here now, they're tearing up our roads that's already tore up. We bring more tractor-trailer companies in, more warehousing in, you're bringing more tractor-trailers in. Even though they look pretty and we make them keep a certain aesthetics to beautify the area, you're tearing up more roads. So if I was a higher income bracket and wanted to bring my kids here, even though they had a great school district and, you know, looked okay, I'm looking at how you're gonna tear up my Mercedes in this area. How, you know, it's trucking companies out here, the smoke and the fog and just the, you know, on the outskirts. It's not on the inside because it's a beautiful place. But you got to sell me. You have to sell me.
Manager, she's mentioned trucking companies. Don't we have an ordinance in place that no more truck, didn't we pass an ordinance prohibiting area?
We don't have any zone areas in the city, zone medium industrial at this time. That they're no longer under comprehensive land use plan. The existing plan today, there are no areas that are zone medium industrial. That is where your truck terminals could be located.
Pop up, okay.
I think it's important to discuss now as you're talking about trucks, the three types of truck businesses that there are. You have truck stops, which I'm completely against. You have truck terminals, which I'm completely against. And then you have what we're getting right now, and I'm encouraging, is the distribution centers. Those are completely different animals than the other two. Those are really good. They bring jobs, they create a destination that the city of Lancaster is looking for, and they bring a big taxes with little services. That's exactly what we need to offset the residential boom that we had in the early 2000s, late 1990s, that it currently isn't paying for itself. We have to find something to offset that. And the only thing that right now that we can find to offset there are the big boxes. And with that being said, I've lived in Lancaster all my life, and those distribution centers are not the things ruining our roads. I've lived in Lancaster all my life. Like I said, roads were bad when I was a little kid, and they're worse now. I'll be the first one to admit, people call me all the time, well, our roads are bad. I say, I understand. I drive the same road you do. As soon as we get some funding and some money, I want to put it towards it. Right now, we're sitting on bonds that we can't even sell because we can't afford to sell them to fix the roads, because our tax revenues aren't where they need to be. And the only thing that we can do, and also something else you have to understand is, when you're in business and any entity, you have to push what developers want to do or what your customers want. And what is, right now what Lancaster's seeing is that logistically is going to be our future. We can't push banking and we can't push other things like that because it's not what people want in this area. What people want here is that we are centrally located between 35, 20, and 45 and possibly Loop 9. We're perfect for transportation. And what we have to do is embrace it and work with it and try to figure out what's the best way that Lancaster can work with this bubble that we're getting with the distribution centers, and also work with Dallas and DeSoto and other neighboring communities to make it work. But we can't just say, hey, you know what, I just want to have banks in the city of Lancaster. I just want hotels, because that's not where the market's at. We have to work with our market to make a boom, to make Lancaster a destination. When that happens, then you can say, you know what, let's work off some retail off of this. Let's spin some hotels off of it. But it's just not, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. Right now, Lancaster for many years has missed chance after chance or opportunity after opportunity because they say, well, it's a good thing, but it's not perfect. It's not what we want. The perfect thing is not going to come. You have to figure out what works, make it work, and then spin it to your goal. I think that's and for me, distribution centers are what that opportunity is.
I love what you just said, and I truly agree. But how many of each? Like you said, we can't just do all bankings, but we can't just do all big boxes out here. We can't just do, I mean, how many is enough
Well,
of
I
anything?
think, and the other question, when you ask that, you got to realize we're 55% undeveloped.
Yeah.
We have a whole
Yes,
lot
sir.
of land to do a lot of things with.
Right.
And right now, we just got started. You know, so it's going to take a lot more than the 3 or 4 boxes that we just approved to get the ball rolling. You know, so as we develop, you got to realize we're 55% developed, and we just annexed more land to do something with. So, you know, to me personally, we just got started.
So as we think about the questions that y'all were considering before our session, that's really gets to that question G there, of what other kinds of businesses do we need? What do we need to be doing to diversify so that it's not all the eggs in the one basket? Not that you're going to cut off the logistics necessarily, but what else do you want to diversify on as well? So that's one of the other questions that we identified for y'all to think about based on the research that we did. So let me ask you we want to go back and touch on the retail discussion that we were having before. Are there other comments about the kinds of new retail that y'all want to attract? Any further comments on the retail aspects at this point?
I think we can move on from
Okay.
retail and talk
Okay.
about.
How about, okay, so then we've got the question about what other types of businesses and jobs are important to diversify the employment base. We have a question E about office growth and how that might fit in. And then we'll go back a page to C and D here where we were talking. The first one there is the appeal about logistics and the comment that you mentioned, Councilmember, about should this be a component, what actions will be important to keep it thriving if this is one of the components. So we have that question. And then question D there gets to the points that we talked about on Tuesday about the medical center and the medical related things. So are there folks that maybe let's continue our discussion on this item C about logistics and the appeal for logistics. Are there other comments on that topic or that question that y'all might have thought about?
We are already working on it. part of the other problem that we have in our city and also in this southeastern quadrant is the fact that we don't have the infrastructure in. We don't have the sewers, we don't have the water all over to be able to make that growth happen. And a lot of the bigger companies will go where there's infrastructure because they're not going to have to fund that. Fortunately, we had Prologis that came in, and we were able to work out a deal where they put in the infrastructure, and we, over a period of time, have paid them back for the infrastructure that they put in, along with the fact that there's that if a company puts in infrastructure, that then they will be able to recoup some of it because of fees that would be paid by other companies that would come in. But we've already started that. Unfortunately, we had the county invest with us and come step up to the plate to bring $10 million for us to be able to work with Wilmer to be able to help that area. I think when the infrastructure starts getting put in, and we are working, anytime there's an opportunity for infrastructure that we can put money to, that we do work toward doing that. I-20 in Houston School, we would love to see a hotel right there at that corner, but we don't have infrastructure on the other side. We've got to figure out how to get infrastructure over there. We ran a sewer line up to Wintergreen and 35 in the hopes that there was going to be a hotel right there. But you look down 35, we don't have the infrastructure going down 35 to support businesses there. So you got to have that bones to be able to support businesses, and that's another thing that we've got to work toward, figuring out how are we going to do this to be able to help attract businesses, because they're going to go where there's already the infrastructure if this isn't a do or die place for them to be at.
And that question about where to put the infrastructure in a way comes back to the overall issue of what kind of a community do you want to have, what kinds of jobs, what kinds of businesses, where do you see those being located? We'll talk a little later on this evening about that scenario and what are the good locations if we're going to continue expanding logistics, or if we're going to expand on the medical. Where do those go? And then the question after that becomes, how do we prioritize our infrastructure investments on those? So, so as you think about that logistics, that segment of the market, what are the things that you all see as being the most important for your vision of how that fits into the strong and diverse economy that you'd like to see in the future?
Yeah, I mean,
Mayor?
I think I think we should think in terms of, you know, how do we build on the success that we've had, but start to really try to identify, okay, what are the key kind of industries that we want to attract to the area, and then we will have to work with, you know, the experts on what tactics do we use to incentivize those kinds of industries to come to the area that will broaden the diversity of the workforce.
Right.
Because, I mean, obviously, logistics makes a lot of sense for reasons that Marco mentioned, but that's not all we want to be.
Sure.
I think everybody agrees with that. So how then, what then do we want to start trying to, is it professional office buildings, call centers, you know, is it medical industry related that could tie in with the medical district and the hospital? You know, so we have to kind of drill down on those things, and then from there figure out what is our strategy to bring those type of uses to the area.
So is it fair to say, and go ahead.
Well, just piggybacking on what the mayor said, what actually be more important than keeping it thriving businesses, your medical offices, law office, doctor's office, I think. And we already have adopted the international code, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yes. So so we have that
Okay.
in place.
Okay, so while the logistics, what I'm hearing from y'all, the logistics has been valuable to you, it's gonna continue being important,
Right.
but let's concentrate on making sure it stays there healthy, but let's not put a lot of focus on attracting more of it. Is that what I'm hearing? Let's work on diversifying. Let's move on to the question on medical. Is that, yes, sir?
On the issue of diversification, have you as experts found any value in attracting utilities, energy, telecommunications? AT&T at one time had a very strong presence in this city, for whatever reason.
Mike.
Uh,
Mike. Microphone, yeah.
It's your fault, James. AT&T had a very strong presence in our community at one time. I don't know why they came. I don't know why they left. Energy at the intersection of, what is that, Bear Creek, Houston, yeah, Encore. These industries, I'm wondering if your expert background has shown that those are the waves of the future. And is there any way that we could devise a tactic, an appeal to go at those industries specifically, because someone in these other cities are targeting Toyota, someone is targeting whoever went to Arlington, and as she said, the infrastructure may not be there. I don't know if Arlington did not have the infrastructure there, but I think they got together and said, okay, if we can't offer you 10 years, hey, we'll offer you 15 years if you do the infrastructure. We're talking about basically a negotiating tactic that might strengthen our position.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, from your background, have you found that utilities, energy, telecommunications, are they solid
Yeah.
citizens that you go after?
They really are, and you know, they're growing industries. Telecommunications is not going to go anywhere. It's going to continue to grow.
Dish, you know, they hire all of our call center employees that drive to Arlington or Irving, wherever they're located. And someone somehow told Dish, wherever they came from, California or wherever they came from, hey, go to Arlington and what have you. And they didn't go there because Texas Stadium was there. Something happened that brought them there.
Yeah. I think the good thing, the advantage that you have as a community is you're already attracting, you know, the logistics industry has discovered Lancaster. And whether, you know, again, that comes with advantages and disadvantages, but now you're on the map as a business community, as a business location. And as we start to talk about diversifying that, those industries, think about all of the businesses who might do business with those logistics companies.
So
You
what
know,
do
they-
we offer
Yeah.
AT&T out of San Antonio?
Yeah.
What is our discussion? How do we
Well,
have that discussion?
the first thing you do is figure out if that's a target industry that you want to go after. And in a comprehensive plan, you know, a comprehensive plan doesn't typically address those kinds of things. You know, what you really need is an economic development plan that you can articulate, a strategy that you can articulate and say to the outside world, we want to go after these 5 industries. And here are the characteristics of those industries. Telecommunications might be one, logistics might be one, and here are the incentives that we're going to use to attract those different industries. That's really how Arlington, Irving, you know, Fort Worth, that's how those communities are marketing themselves, with that package of both vision, articulation, strategic initiatives,
Is it consistent
and
repetitive
incentives.
over and over and
Over and over again. They go to trade shows, they go to ICSC, and they take that package. You know, it's honestly, it's like taking a loan package to the bank.
Sure.
And saying, this is our community, here's our assets, here's our attributes, here's what we're willing to do in partnering with your business. That's the kind of organized, strategic effort that makes for successful economic development.
And so,
That's the sort of thing that really needs to be grounded in your comprehensive.
right.
Absolutely.
It really needs to be focusing on the businesses that
Yeah.
relate to the community that you want to be. And
Right.
those businesses that spin off or follow on, Councilman.
Very much so.
Talking about that a little bit before the meeting, but that's
Yeah.
one of the things to look at, the businesses that are here and what can,
Yeah.
what comes with them, what
Mhm.
ones need to be part of that.
Very much so.
So if we have that roadmap, if we have that roadmap in our comprehensive plan, which we've got a comprehensive plan, but we seem to float away and say, oh, well, we'll bring this in, instead of staying strong to that roadmap of the direction that we want to go. And so doesn't it also come back to, you can use the comprehensive plan as a tool to be able to say, we don't want you here because you are not part of our vision.
Yeah.
But, you know, are we going to be able to do that because of the investment expectation? And if the zoning's there and they're, you know, that's where you get caught, because if
Yeah.
something's zoned, they have a right unless they come in with a PD or something, and that we can start manipulating and doing what we want to do. So,
That all comes back again, and I'm going back to the points that we talked about on Tuesday, and that idea that this comprehensive plan, that what y'all talked about Tuesday was that once you have adopted that this plan that we're creating now needs to be the foundation for unified action, that political will for action and investment. So where we are today, as we're looking ahead now, is what y'all said Tuesday. This comprehensive plan should be that kind of roadmap, and when we've got it done, it should be that thing that really does unify you and move forward on those next steps.
But it also has to have some flexibility to, you know, to adapt to the changes that may occur in 5 to 8 years as well. Something else may be hot.
And that's why we update these.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that's why we're talking about a comprehensive plan. We're not talking about parcel by parcel zoning or things
Right.
of that kind. We're talking about that broader vision. So that's where what we're trying to get to with this process.
Well,
So,
I'd just like to add to it. There was a company, I don't know how many people do online shopping. The next big box we get, I would love something like energy, a health facility, like a Blue Cross here that hires plenty of people, but they got a big box. They're taking up a lot of our space. But also you have to think of outside the box, because like Mahia said, you want to do something different, bring it here.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
Philadelphia,
right.
we did QVC, not where I live, but they did it in a destitute area, nice little farmland. They bought QVC there. QVC does tours all day, every day. You ride in the cart and you shop all day. They have a great big box where it's a distributor like you can't imagine that hires, houses a lot of employees that just make your order and send it out. They have a billing department that's out of control. That looks like a big energy spot or whatever, but they took up a lot of land, but they maximized on it, and they made it beautiful, and they had tours, and they had the outdoor barbecue things, and they had so it was pretty, but it was a lot of money being made, and the town, the city made a lot of money off of their taxes.
the tax base.
So it was like beautiful.
Yeah.
It looked like a
A
resort.
combination. Yep.
Yes, it looked
Yes.
like a resort, and they built it up because they wanted to be the first in there. And it's all about your proposal and your presentation and what you're willing to give. You might give them a 10-year tax abatement, but you build the infrastructure, or, we'll do the water cut. It's deals out there for
Sure.
them
Yeah.
that will make them come.
Right.
But you got to
Right.
get that first person and give them everything we got.
Everything, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So,
And as time goes on, those incentives gets less and less and less because we have what they want. There's people
right.
filling in.
Once you've got the
We got
one, then the
untouched
other
territory.
ones want to come around too. So, which in a way goes back to the discussion we were having on the medical and how to build on the medical district that y'all have. And what are some of the other ideas on that from the standpoint of this diverse economic
It's the same
employment
thing.
growth?
It's a big box.
Okay.
They're gonna make it beautiful for people to come, but they have to have a clinic for everyday people to come, and that's employment. And then they have the rooms and so on and so forth. So you gotta think in that aspect of not just a big box where we house stuff and only a few people work, but you gotta think of a big box that's gonna bring us revenue, constant revenue. And employment.
Revenue
at
and
the same
jobs
time.
is what I'm
Right,
hearing you say.
employment at
So,
the same time.
so looking at targeting key kinds of industries is what I'm hearing y'all say.
Right.
Looking at things that will be the ones that want to come because of what you already have, the ones that, you know, what's the support, what's the piece that's next to it. So looking at that, particularly from the standpoint of your logistics, looking at that from your medical. We talked on Tuesday about the medical industry and that growth relating to the needs of this community and the needs of this part of the region and really specializing. So that's another theme that I think you all have identified for the employment base.
Right, and then if you want to combine it, because we said about health, you get one of the hospitals like Baylor and THR, their whole facility, they have a gym inside. And it's not just for the employees, for the outside people. So we don't have like a mega gym out here, like a 24-hour fitness. But if you combine that and have a big box, you're still using the same space and you're having access for the community. So if you think on those terms,
So,
of how
so
can we
tying
maximize-
those community wellness kinds of things in with the emphasis or the area for the medical.
Right.
Is that what you're suggesting?
Because I know in your first presentation, you said there's some sweet spots that we might not want to get rid of, like a 20%, we might want to hold. So if we 55% already developed and we still have 45% left, and we want to use that 20% just to have open space, you might want to try to maximize on your other 25%. I don't like math. But that 25%, that, okay, we want some more big boxes, but what kind of big boxes do we want? We want to
Okay.
put everything in there.
You want
Gym,
the box,
health
you want the
facility.
boxes that are
Right,
these
and
these
employment.
new kinds of employment, the big boxes that have more jobs in them? Is that's what I'm hearing from
But
y'all?
I think, and keep in mind, from a practical standpoint, so what happens is, you know, the council will, generally during our retreat, we try to identify goals for economic development amongst others. And so that's an opportunity where we begin to have dialogue about what kind of industries do we want to start to attract or work towards, and then utilize that as a way of building a plan, i.e. incentives, and, you know, what kind of packages will it take to attract. So I think it's important that we understand how that process works. And again, we're at a point where we can build off of the momentum that we've had from recent developments, and the fact that we think there's at least a more global awareness about Lancaster as a result of some of these other developments. And now we can start to really hone in on what other kinds of employment base we really want.
So what I'm hearing from y'all in our discussion about diverse, strong employment base, again, is identifying what those key industries are, taking advantage of the logistics that's here, making sure that that stays as a good component of the economic base, looking at those businesses that know you because of what's here now, whether that's additional logistics, whether that's those businesses that want to be near there that provide their services, or what have you. Those businesses that tie into the medical and the wellness and becoming a regional center for those kinds of services and facilities for the people who live here and people in this part of the region. I'm hearing that you're wanting to see how you might benefit from some of these changes in retail. I don't know if that is that fulfillment center idea, or if there's something about the places like the downtown that get to become those walkable areas again, that there's some particular places within the community that have that kind of potential for retail and for that kind of employment, that kind of sales tax coming through. Are there other points that we haven't talked about yet that came to your all's mind as far as the employment base and how to make sure that this plan's vision includes and supports a diverse economic base that's a strong base, but that's going to be the kind of jobs for the folks that you want to be able to appeal to for the future.
Do you think, from your research and talking to the citizens, that the quality of life, and this is where I want to live, versus I want growth and economic, did those two hit each other, and was there a constant battle between, you know, this is where I just want to live, this is where I want to be, and this is my quality of life, as opposed to I want X, 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 X in my community like other communities. Do you see a growing, evolving cities like ours? Is that tennis match there? Is it strong? Is it going to be probably one of the impediments? Or what did your research and talking with people come up with?
Talk about the community, what we heard here.
Economic development used to be, 20 years ago, economic development was all about getting jobs, job creation, whether you went out and attracted new jobs to your community or created jobs from businesses within your community. The focus was 90% on job creation, doing whatever it took to get an employer to come to your community. Over the years, what has evolved is that we refer to a community's economic development infrastructure. That economic development infrastructure used to just be, can we accommodate businesses? Can we put them somewhere? Can we just find a place for them in our community? Today, economic development infrastructure is everything from your parks, your amenities, all of those quality of life things that you're talking about. Is there housing to support, a wide range of employees? If you think about the typical company, there's only a few people at the top that need high-end housing. Everybody else needs either middle-income housing or apartments or rental housing. Can your community accommodate all those different kinds of housing types that are needed? Do you have good schools? Do you have good health care? Is everything, all the aspects of your community are what you sell as economic development. And the successful communities, the ones who are attracting the most businesses, are the ones that tell that story, that have all of those, of those pieces in place.
But my question is, did you find out where the lean was from the citizens' read?
And in this particular community, in terms of the charrette, the whole discussion where we had folks from all over Lancaster all day working together.
Right.
We had interviews, we've had the online surveys, a lot of different ways for people to comment. The things that we're hearing from people is not, I don't think it's a fight quite like you're suggesting, but I think in terms of what we're hearing, in some cases it can be. But from what we're hearing here, people care a great deal about the quality of life, but they want those jobs, they want to see that growth as well. It's not.
They wanted a place to live, but they still
But they
wanted a job.
They also want that job.
In a radius?
They want to see that job close by. I mean, we didn't try to ask them, how many miles away, but what we heard from the people in the community, and it's clear if you take a look back in the background materials about the visions that the folks came up with at that charrette. That was part of what we asked about, and I think every one of those groups came up with something that had high quality of life. There was a great deal of emphasis on that, but it also included the jobs. It also included the businesses. It said we want things like shopping and services to be close by.
So both worlds came out of this. Then.
Right, and I think
in
your residents, I'm involved and Mark and all of us are involved in these kinds of projects in a lot of communities, and I think that's really the trend that we're seeing all over, that people don't want just the place to live and then drive somewhere to work or something else like that. They really want that combination, and I think that's why having a comprehensive plan that explains the balance you have for this community is really critical, because that needs to inform the marketing that goes out to the economic development folks. So that kind of balance is really what we heard the folks in this community looking for. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask if there are other. I was highlighting a couple of the key points that I'm hearing from y'all's discussion about the strong and diverse employment base. Let me ask you if there are any other points that you noted in your workbooks ahead of time, or any others that we haven't covered in our discussions this evening on this topic, because I want to try to wrap it up, and I particularly want to make sure we have time to talk about the geographic relationship, which is where we get to the scenario of looking at those preferred scenarios. And so I want for us to be able to shift over and talk about those results and what those mean. That in turn is really important to the quality of life and to the employment, because it starts to tell you what places within the community are going to be desirable for new sorts of housing, what places for new kinds of businesses. And so that geographic land use component is a really important part as well. So I want to be able to shift to that here in a few minutes. Let's see if there are other points on economic base.
So when you get to this point, then you're going to, because we are lacking in some housing area, that you're going to be able to tell us the economic impact of that housing.
Right. And that's going to be part of that analysis of the
Okay.
scenarios, which we'll get to momentarily. So other comments on employment base? I don't want to close it off unduly, but I also know there's a lot of other information we want to cover with y'all. Okay? If, in that case, let me ask you. We'll wrap up for. We'll put together sort of the bullet summary for you of the discussion that we've had. We also, of course, have the flip charts. We're recording everything on the flip charts, and so you'll see those as part of the results of the meeting as well. And I would note that we did have the comments as well from Councilmember Morris that she contributed to us in terms of economic as well. So we've got those to take advantage of too. And so I think, Mark, if we want to move into the preferred scenario, or perhaps this is a good time to provide the other information, Opal. Sure.
On Tuesday night, during the discussion, council asked about, and the commission was asking information about the ISD and their involvement in the process. And the consultants noted that they are involved in the process, but this discussion was more tailored for you all. And so what we did is we worked with the district to gather, provide some marketing package and information that the district utilizes for when they're targeting businesses or targeting families to locate and attend our school district. And so we have that information available for you this evening. And we also have the president of the Chamber of Commerce Executive Committee and Board of Directors that is also on the advisory committee for the comp plan update. He's also in attendance tonight to listen in on the discussion as well, to share back with the Chamber of Commerce at a later date.
Again, that's more follow up and build on what we talked about on Tuesday. And so let me ask Mark to cover the information about the scenarios and what we've learned in terms of the costs and the other implications.
So we handed out some information to you at the end of the last meeting for you to put into your workbooks. And now I need to see if I put it in the right place in mine. Tab 6. I did not put it in the right place. Do you have it there, Rob? I went against what I told you to do. I think I put it in the back. Yep. So what you have in your workbooks, the multiple scenarios that were developed, and I guess the first thing, we have Rob here with us. Were there any questions about the symbology that was used to talk about population, employment, housing mix? And keep in mind, as I described this to you, we were comparing scenarios against scenarios. So if it was population and one of them says low, then it was probably at the lower end of those scenarios that were created. And if it was high, it was at the higher end. So we were comparing each scenario with the others. So were there any specific questions about what you're looking at related to these symbols?
Not so much the symbols, just, will you speak to kind of the methodology behind how you arrived at, you know, the various outputs from the scenarios?
Yes. I just got to talk loud into it. It's cutting in and out. All right. I can really talk loud too. So it's important to note that on the low, medium, high, that we don't want to use good, better, best, or bad, or good. Some of these indicators may be good and some of them may be bad. For example, on vehicle trips, more cars means more trips. Means, you know, less cars will mean less trips. So depending on where you fit on that, it can be a good thing or bad thing. With respect to each of the indicators, that we put all of the scenarios or all the maps that were created and at the workshop into a land use software called Community Viz. We plug in assumptions of the area of Texas, of the Metroplex on jobs, on salaries, and you know, number of employees per area and number of houses per area. And each of these are factored in for each little place type. And you can see the little stickers on the map. Each one of them represents a different level. And so when we put it into the computer program, it outputs all the numbers, and you know, it has a big long spreadsheet of a lot of numbers that we factor in, that we have to look at and take away as many decimal points as possible and come up with something that's easier to understand and readable so that it makes sense to us. And we can see the comparison between one scenario versus another scenario. So
To go through a few of these, for instance, the population, the stickers that were used in the scenarios, for instance, there was one for more of a rural residential type of development. So there were assumptions made based upon what we see in Lancaster for suburban residential as to how many people per acre, how many houses per acre, assumptions as to household size and those types of things. Whereas if people used more of the stickers that were suburban residential, that would have higher population ramifications. And then certainly in mixed-use environments, or some of the symbols that were, the stickers that were used to indicate the urban residential products or townhomes, then those would have even higher ramifications. So there was somewhat of a range within these from a population standpoint. At the same time, you could start to look at individuals that would live in those different housing types. So that might start to contribute to employment. But I guess the other thing on employment was if somebody used more of the strip retail centers or more of the mixed use or business parks, that's starting to drive certain types of employment, whereas if it was more of the industrial uses, there's fewer employees per square foot. So that's sort of the process that they went through. Housing mix, again, we've heard you talk a lot about multi-generational housing, so as you look at those symbols, the ones that have the most symbols on them represent that it covered more of the broader spectrum of housing types that would attract the multiple generations to Lancaster. Age mix, that's along that same lines as to who would be attracted in the area. And then again, vehicle trips came from somewhat the locations of where development was, but also what types of trips are being generated by each of these product types. Is that right?
Each of the place types represents a different number of trips that can be generated. So suburban neighbor, you know, the national average is the suburban neighborhood home produces about 12 trips a day. And that changes based on the type of housing unit it is. So the different distribution of chips will result in different trips generated. Does that make sense?
So that's trips coming into the city and leaving out as well, including.
Yes. Because there's a to and there's a from. So.
But it's right. Is it within the city, within the boundaries, or out and back in?
It can be anywhere. It's just how many trips are generated
from that house.
By those uses.
Starting here.
Yeah.
And could be ending in this four corners or exiting out and coming back.
Yeah.
And then from the cost-benefit standpoint, a lot of what went into that was the locations of development. So obviously you have sewer service in some areas, You don't have sanitary sewer service and others, water service capacities, those types of things, roadway infrastructure that's in place. So depending on where people place the chips, that certainly had impacts on cost benefit. If, for instance, somebody was putting all of their chips down in the far southeast quadrant of the map, where there's not a high level of roads and there's not sewer service, then the assumption is that you would need to provide some level of services to be able to support that. So there is that cost benefit, that negative cost benefit. So where you see the ones that have the higher cost benefit, it's more that it's working within that framework of where infrastructure is available. Now, the offset of that would be, for instance, if it is more of the rural residential product that's out there, then certainly that can be accommodated without putting as much infrastructure in place for those types of uses. So there.
So the more chips means the more out here?
The
more symbols
three.
on cost benefit.
Right, the
means
twos
that
and
there's
threes.
a bigger gap between the revenue generated and the cost of development. Does that make sense?
So in other words,
Yes.
the revenue that you're getting back is
Yes.
much higher than the cost to provide the services.
Right, okay, I got it.
And then finally, I guess the wage potential was the final one that was looked at. And again, that's tying back to the jobs that are being created within each scenario. So it was interesting because at the end of each of that session, we went around the room and people shared their ideas. And from a vision standpoint, there were some really great ideas on all of the scenarios. But what we have the ability to do now is drill into those scenarios a little bit more and start to see how are they performing against each other, and if there are aspects of some that are making them perform well, is that something that you want to see within a preferred scenario?
Yeah. So, you know, if I, as I go through, as I was looking at these, so for example, and I may be getting ahead, I'm sorry, but, you know, if I look at wage potential at the scenarios that offer the most symbols, I guess I'm curious because, for example, in scenario 8, it only has one symbol for employment. So I guess my interpretation is that you are limiting, or you've limited the employment opportunity, but that employment opportunity yields a higher wage earning potential. So that to me kind of throws up a flag, because I think there's a danger in that somebody talked about putting all your eggs in one basket. You know, you're subject to, if that industry goes away, then you have basically, you've really handicapped the community.
That's exactly the connection we want you to start making, because there was a lot of talk about balance a few minutes ago,
Right.
and not having all the eggs in one basket and having multiple pots that you may be pulling from.
Technology never goes away.
That's true.
Communications never goes away. Energy never goes away. If we target the energies and the industries of business,
Well,
what are those industries? I mean,
But
this brochure talks about Texas Instrument, and Texas Instrument is all through this brochure. So that tells me, as someone that's disinterested, that Texas Instrument is a partner that I need to market, because they're already a partner of our school district. They're already making positive comments of our great school district. And what is more solid in the industry for the future than TI?
But I think that's a great point. That business segment may continue to be strong for decades to come. The question is, will that industry be strong in this community, or will it leave this community and go to another community? So all those folks in Torrance who have benefited from Toyota for however long, they're sitting back saying, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do now? Because that whole machine and everything that is spun off from it is leaving and coming. So I'm just saying that has to be a part of our thinking, that yeah, we want to attract certain industries, but we also want to be in a situation where if that industry, not that the industry overall will decline, but they may leave and go to another community, how then are we positioned to withstand that hit? And I think we're better able to do that if we create the kind of balance that we've talked
I mean,
about.
I think we're a long time away from that. I mean, right now we have nothing. We don't. Right now, there's not a whole lot of things that
We
can.
don't have anything at all.
Right.
Let's go ahead
Right.
and open it
We're
up.
not there. We're not there. We've never had Toyota. We haven't lost Toyota. We had to get Toyota before we get to that step. Right now, we're not trying to figure out what we're gonna do with the egg when it hatches. We're trying to figure out how to get the egg.
But
So-
I think you all would agree that we have to, or we should be thinking well beyond our time in this
Right.
in this environment.
Yep.
And so I mean, certainly we got to start somewhere, no doubt. But I think we also need to make sure that as we think through this long term, we want to ensure that future governing bodies recognize that, hey, what we've started in terms of looking at how to diversify the business climate, you know, I mean, that's important.
Nurture it and keep it healthy.
I would just add to that one of the ways that you do create that flexibility and build that flexibility into your plan is to create, for lack of a better term, great places for businesses to thrive, so that if you do have a major employer that leaves, you've already created the environment around them.
So is that housing? You're talking about
Yeah,
housing?
it's housing, it's public amenities, it's parks, it's recreation, it's
So
all of
then-
that
So then you're
stuff.
following the DeSoto plan of action, because there was no Thorn Tree 20 years ago.
Yeah,
There was the school district, but there was no Thorn Tree. Frost Farms 1, then Frost Farms 2, and then
Yep.
you had da-da-da-da-da.
yeah.
Because they were just as old as we were. But they had their school district, they didn't have the land that we offered, they had no mall like Cedar Hill, but they did something, so they
Mm-hmm.
created, you're saying a gated community?
Well, no, not necessarily
what
a
do you-
gated community, but they created a place or places within their community where either businesses could come to thrive or residents can come and have a diversity of housing. Whatever those places are, whatever that environment is, you know, in a lot of ways, if you create those in your community, it almost doesn't matter who the businesses that come, because they're going to thrive because of the environment. The whole community is this great community that businesses want to be in. So if you lose one, there's going to be another one right behind it.
You know, it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, in regards to being diverse in our approach to building this city, it's important that we identify businesses that can survive on their own, but collectively work together so that we become strong. So if one leaves, it can be easily replaced with any business, and you can continue to grow, so you won't be a Toyota. You're more sustainable that way. But when you
Very
have
much
one
so.
business that everything is spinning off,
Yeah.
now you subject yourself to fall real fast.
Yeah, and you don't have to look any further than all of the major Texas cities that, you know, in the 70s that were booming because of the oil industry. When the oil the price of gas went down 30 or 40 cents a gallon, that industry just cratered. And all of those communities that were so reliant on oil, the oil industry, for economic growth, boy, it just killed them. I mean, that's the lesson, I think, is to diversify your economy, but also diversify your community. All the assets that your community has, those are going to be the things that sustain you over the long run. So that if, the reality in economic development is a lot of times those decisions get made thousands of miles away, to close a plant or to pull an employer out of a community. You don't have any control over that. So all you can do is create the environment around those businesses that will make it an attractive place for the next business to come in and replace them.
I just want to add one thing. I'm from Alabama, and we have Fort McClellan in Anniston, Alabama. The whole community thrived off that base, and there was opportunity for economic development many times. And because they were so hooked on that drug, they refused to accept or work with anybody else to establish a secondary support unit. And when it left, the whole town dried up. And that's what we don't want to happen here in this thing. We want to build this from ground up so the foundation is strong enough to sustain any kind of economic downturn so that it can continue to thrive and be sustainable. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I was gonna say some along the same lines. I'm just thinking historically speaking with Lancaster, and we didn't have those businesses and that economic hub and base. So it's taking our history and really marrying the history with what we're projecting with the future. So having that good balance of quality enhancements, safety, just that whole diverse housing mixtures, all of that, so that if for whatever reason we have a turn with businesses and someone wants to uproot, like you said, then we still have the solids of that. Because though the job is no longer here, this is where I want to be. So I'm willing to travel. And truth be told, that's what many of our residents are doing today. The jobs are not necessarily here, and we travel, but then this is where we live. So we really want to grow the quality, because we talked about it Tuesday. Not only do I want to live here, but I want to play here as well.
if we can continue along this lines, this is the type of discussion we wanted to start happening. Where we wanted to go with this is not, I think I said last week or on Tuesday, we don't want to pick a scenario and say that's our right scenario. The whole purpose of that exercise was to start to understand ramifications of decisions. So where we want to go tonight is let's talk about some of these key indicators and talk about issues related with each of them, and then start to portray through each of these what is success. And then we can go back and look at each of those scenarios and say, yeah, based on what you told us, that one is performing better from a housing standpoint and the diversity of housing. So why don't we start with housing? You know, I'm going to channel Bill for a minute, and then Bill can join in. But you know, we've been seeing things in a lot of communities. We've done a lot of work in Rowlett, Texas. In Rowlett, Texas, as the city manager put it, you can have any choice of housing that you want as long as it is a single-family, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Rowlett, Texas. And that's what they had available. And as they started, Bill and Ann started looking at the psychographics of the community, they found that there was all this pent-up demand for other housing types. There were young people who were single that were living in a single-family, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house when they really wanted to live in an urban-style apartment in a mixed-use environment, but they couldn't, so they were living there because that's what the supply was allowing. Now, there are other things related to housing. So I guess question number one, we've heard about diverse housing and being, you know, we want to be a diverse community, multi-generational. So do we assume that the appropriate plan is one that has a balance in opportunities with multiple housing types? Is there agreement on that, or should we discuss that further?
I think we should have a mix.
Okay.
I think I find it very interesting because of the fact that this is something that people have a tendency to fight because they do not understand that we do need that variety. We do need that 2-bedroom and 1-bath or 1.5-bath small home, as in the tribute, it's called a casita. are that they have the condos or the apartment type of thing, because you've got people who do not have the income level that a family is. And is it still true that the person with the most buying power at this time is the single woman?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
They're not buying me dinner.
Well, I didn't say by dinner, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that standard of the family is no longer the traditional economic driving force. And we don't have that available because it is the single woman that is having a driving force in the economy of buying, whether it be a condo or the needs there. So we've got to stop thinking that we're only building houses for families. We've got to start thinking there are other housing types that we have to have.
So we heard that, and we also heard you say multiple times that we also need to think of the CEOs and the doctors and what they may be looking for. So we got to cover that
Yes.
whole spectrum.
Because
Okay.
there are single women who are not just at a certain income. There are single professionals. There are single dentists.
Exactly.
There are single hygienists. There are single, the list goes
So we got to this
yeah.
plan, a successful plan will cover all of
The
it.
DeSoto plan. There was no Frost Farms 1. There was no Frost Farms 2. They had their school district, and they had no malls.
Yeah.
They didn't have any of those things, and they didn't have any land. But somehow, some developer decided, hey, let's put X. Now, we may not have to go that grandiose, but I think we do need to have a diversification
Variety.
of housing as opposed to just being a starter home community.
Yeah.
There should be a diversification. If you're going to have a diversification of businesses, if you're going to have a diversification of industries, if you're going to have a diversification of what our schools are offering, STEM, et cetera, you should have a diversification of housing and not just singular, because if you do, then we'll be targeted by Walmart, by Dollar General, and what have you, because this is what that group will buy.
Exactly. And that ties to and we'll get to the retail in just a moment. Yes, ma'am.
Just with the diverse housing, I'm thinking too, I think, pointing to the fact of single women, but also looking at the aging population. And
Yes.
how their desire is to downsize, but still have that clustered community of like population even, where they have easy access, walkability.
Continue with their church in their neighborhood.
Absolutely. So I would not want that individual that's in that baby boomer bracket to say, oh, I want to sell my home and move away. I'd rather you sell your home and move somewhere to another community within our city as well.
So,
And shouldn't,
yes, sir.
Let me, first of all, I think residentially, I'm for whatever, but yeah, I want something sustainable, because what's killing us right now is that our houses right now aren't paying for themselves. They're not providing us the cost and the services that we have to provide for them.
That's the point we were just going to let
Yeah.
Bill make.
You know, that's important. I mean, if you can show me a 400 square foot efficiency that'll pay for itself, I'm all for it. But right now, we've got to meet the number that we've heard is $160,000. That house has to appraise more than that in order for it to break even on the services that we have to provide for them. I think moving forward, that's where we have to focus, because right now we are carrying the load way too heavy on these houses that aren't paying for themselves. Right now, we have plenty of houses between the $50,000 to $120,000 range. They're not paying for themselves. And as we move forward, I want to have a higher-end homes is the only thing I can see that'll start paying for themselves and start taking the load off of us and helping pay for the services that are needed in the city. But like I said, if y'all can show me a development of 400 square foot apartments efficiencies that is going to be sustainable, I'm all for it. But I haven't seen one yet. And the problem is we have to lighten the load on the schools, because you start bringing those kind of developments into the community, that's more people per capita going into your schools. So also with the bigger homes, you don't have that. You know, you have the same 2 to 3 people coming into your system with 1 or 2 kids, and all of a sudden, you know, it just lightens the load. I'm not for the smaller developments because I just don't see how they're sustainable.
Well, one of the things, and I'll let Bill add to that in a minute, one of the things that we've heard you say, though, on the multifamily products is you want to target somewhat the the millennial generation that will be higher income producing, and you also want to be focusing in on seniors. And so a lot of the communities where we've been working that have that type of approach, it's not so much a burden on the schools because those are not drive. For instance, again, in one of the communities, they talked about the school bus doesn't even stop at those apartment complexes because there are no students living there. It's singles or those types of.
Now that you're talking millennials, that's another thing that we have to be really careful because the apartments that you build here, if you're trying to attract the millennials, is going to be very difficult because we are 15 minutes
Exactly.
from uptown.
We
And I
heard
can
that
tell
the
you
other
right
day.
now,
Yeah.
with a lot of my friends, they're not going to move. I don't care what kind of apartments you build in Lancaster, they're not going to move here because they want to be within walking distance of the local pubs and the American Airlines centers and the other things like that. So we have to be really careful what kind of developments that we do trying to attract these people because we're too close to downtown Dallas and the urban environment
Okay.
to have that kind of
Okay.
market
Well,
in this community.
And while I don't disagree with that, I do think that on Tuesday, we talked about the campus district and then attracting those that are here and going to school here, but then looking at retention, those that are in high school age, that go off to college, and we want that ability to attract them back into the surrounding familiar environment. So I think it's important to look at both spectrums. And then when we look at the property values and things like that, that's a separate issue because 5-7 years ago, you could purchase a house for $160,000, $165,000, and it may now be worth $120,000. And so that's not that that individual that purchased that home can't afford it, it's just that.
Depreciation of the property.
Absolutely. So, but we do, as we attract this economic base, we want an environment for those that are coming from that, I'll just use the distribution centers. Those are nice salaried or hourly wage jobs. And we want to attract those that are working here to move into our communities. And they may be looking for properties that are on a higher scale, just a more attractive community than we have today.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would add that, again, it's about being open to the possibility of diverse housing, but clearly we have to make sure that the business case justifies that.
And focus on the cost to the community for the different price points.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
think, Sonia, to your point, I had a conversation with a resident last week, a senior who is in a house that is no longer, it's just too big for her. And she said, it'd be great if we had senior apartments or a senior living community, because she would like to stay here, but there's really no viable option for her at this time now. I think that's another example of the kind of housing that could make sense because there is an aging segment of our community that would like to stay here. They just don't have really a good option. And if you look at the current apartment community that we have now, there's not a great appeal,
Yeah.
for someone that's trying to downsize.
Exactly.
And these are people that still have good incomes, that we could keep those dollars in the community, they just don't have. So, that's
Well-
probably more likely than the millennial scenario.
And I'll come right back to you. One of the cases that we're going to ask Bill to make as this moves forward is certainly from the standpoint of housing, there's some housing that will be a cost to the community, but may be required in order to have the strong hospital because you're attracting the pink collar workers. So then you start to look and say, does that offset? Because it all becomes the cost benefit. And at the end of the day, is this decision you're making bringing you more, or is it better not to have that because there's a cost on the other side of the ledger?
But can't
So-
you have the homes average when you have this mixture, that they average so that they do reach that 160 because you have some lower cost, housing in the higher end, that's the idea that when you have a mixture, even in a mixed use where they have the different size houses, is that maybe you have a house that sells for 90,000, but on the other spectrum, in that same area, they've got a house that sells for 200,000. So then it begins to become as
Yeah.
a leveling out, so that the average then does pay for the city services that you're concerned about.
But what's going to really drive that residential cost benefit analysis is a stronger commercial base. Okay, so that's where we have to, we also have to keep that in mind, because ultimately, that number, you know, we know it needs to drop in terms of what the residential value to pay for the service, but that's gonna be driven largely by how well we develop commercially.
You know, we're over here talking about millennials and attracting these people, but it's really sad that we're one of the few communities in Dallas County right now that doesn't have a gated community at all. Doesn't have any houses above $500,000 in the whole community.
Waxahachie's going ahead.
You know,
Glen
I mean,
Heights
I can't think of
take
many
off.
houses right now in the city of Lancaster that honestly appraises for $500,000 or more. There's maybe a handful.
Very few.
Very, very few. You know, and that says a lot about our community.
I know where
When all of a
there's
sudden
two.
you go right across a invisible border that's called 35, and you got Frost Farms 1, 2, and you got
Bingo.
multitude of million-dollar homes. And you go another exit south in Red Oak, a villa, and they got gated communities with houses above $1 million. I mean, that says a lot about us and where we really need to start putting our attention. I don't think it's going to be so much on the apartments, but up higher-end homes.
Okay.
I see two great benefits and two great assets that both council members were bringing up, talking about the aging. If you go up and down the Central Expressway corridor between Knox and what's the big mall there? Caruth Haven. On the left-hand side, the west-hand side, you know what's there? Assistant living facilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we have these type of high-rise, I don't know if there should be high-rise, you know, the I don't know what the word is, but the elderly that live here want to stay here because of the great quality of life here. So that's an asset that we should be able to sell to a developer that says we have a growing market of X.
Our hospital.
Buy a hospital.
Right.
Or we can take it where Silent Night Nursing Home is, out there by that beautiful landscape area, put a beautiful assisted living facility there. And I don't know how much tax dollars we get from that, but I keep hearing about millennial people and how to attract. If we go to the solid industries, the high-tech communications, AT&T, Encore, TXU, if we go to these solid industries and make sure that our schools, our high schools, and our colleges are partnering with that, then with our elderly, our older population, somehow we can talk to our developers and say, hey, look, we have enough land for these types of beautiful facilities that will bring traffic to, they're probably not going to go any further than downtown Lancaster. They're not going to go any further than our historical district. I think if that population is there and if those facilities are there, the magic word is they will come. You know, I'm hearing a lot of, well, we can't have this because we can't have that. We can't have this because we can't have that. There are still so many great assets here with our airport. You know, someone needs to knock on the door every day of DHL until they're tired of seeing us. Or FedEx. You talk about in Alabama, if FedEx was to leave Memphis, it would probably die. But someone has gone to them and told them, here is what you need. And somehow we need to do that, and at the point where we can meet all of the hesitancies that I'm hearing at the table because we don't have this, the infrastructure, what have you. There's still a lot of great assets here that we can still build from if we just take the time to think about how do we develop around those assets. And I was hoping that you guys could steer me, direct me, kick me, show me how to get to that point, because we got some great still assets
Yeah,
here.
we do.
Well,
Yes.
I'm sorry. We talked this evening about bringing employment here and high-tech employment.
Exactly.
You know, Lancaster's 33 square miles around, and that's before we adopted the annex, so I don't know what we have there. But if I'm a corporate manager, and I'm gonna use Lowe's because I know them very well, they fly their store manager out to the site. They give them a 3-year mortgage, any house they pick, over $500,000. That's in Philadelphia because that's the housing rate. And they furnish it from soup to nuts. So if we're gonna get like a Lowe's or a AT&T or something like that, and the wives, they don't want their kid to go 50 miles that way to go to school. They want their husband and they want to be close. So we should get a gated community. That's over $500,000 to sustain those companies that we're trying to bring in here with employment. So we got to look at that. And then too, education, we're bringing in education. Our other council, pro tem the other night said about the new kids coming out of college that's professionals. They do want that. Now, if we don't want to build that because it's not sustaining our taxes, what we can do is take some of these apartments that we have and have a developer subdivide them and revamp those. That's one way of not taking over our land, but still doing something nice. So we have some options.
Well, if I can, from the housing standpoint, start to tie some things together that I think we've heard tonight, and I think it starts with the employment, the industries you want to attract. And if we start, I guess what we heard first was some of the low-hanging fruit. It was the logistics, but it's not just about logistics, that it's what are the ties that you can make to other things that want to be here because you have logistics. And then, by the way, there are other things that use those types of buildings. Start to look at the employees that those places would be bringing in, the housing needs, but also build upon these other assets, the hospital. What do the pink-collar workers need? What do the high-end doctors need? What kind of housing do they need to get the very best doctors to that hospital? Because we know that they want to be able to live close to that hospital, and if you don't have it, that's going to pull down the success. But also there's other workers there. So the housing, it sounds like what I'm hearing you saying is, it's not just to go create all this housing, but we will create what we need to support these employment pieces that will bring the tax generation to the city that we're looking for. Is that correct, or? Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the hospital should be able to tell us, what those trends are and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That goes back to your proposal. You go and do a proposal to them and say, look, we don't have a 500-plus house for your CEO to come over here, but if you build this hospital over here, we have this sweet spot with 20 acres.
Yeah.
We'll build a gated community for you, but you have to sign this right here, and we're gonna give you a tax abatement, we're gonna do X, Y, Z, and then you start from there and let them bring a down payment to build, and meanwhile, we're building at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
all in your proposal, it can all be done, it just has to be a delivery.
So if we start along that lines with looking at the business, building on what you've got, you've identified some things you want to see, and each of these goes a step further and builds upon the thing that you did in the last step. The housing needs to be aligned with those things. And then you've talked a lot about the age mix, which is on the list here. We just heard you talk about that again, that, we want our seniors to be able to stay in the community. If we want the kids to come back and live here after they get out of college, then we're going to have jobs for them. Vehicle trips, I guess some of these things, the cost benefit is also associated with where development occurs. So a lot of communities will say, obviously there are some uses that, some of the higher end homes for doctors you may want out in the country or on larger lots and those types of things. But from the cost benefits standpoint, I think you truly saw that there are impacts to, there's some room to fill in to the fabric that you've already created with your infrastructure. Is that something that we should really try to focus on as we look for success?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I just want to add one thing. This is, boy, a great discussion on diversity of housing, but one thing that most communities in North Texas, most communities throughout the southwestern United States are faced with or are challenged with is that their housing supply is really driven by the home builders and driven by the developers. And I can't think of one community that we've worked in the southwestern United States over the past decade that truly has a housing mix that addresses all their demographic groups. You know,
Columbia, Maryland.
from the 20s and 30s, the generations X and Y, up to the baby boomers. You know, if you do any reading on demographics at all, you know that the two biggest groups that are growing the fastest and will continue to grow the fastest over the next decade are the generations X and Y and people 65 and over. And that no community is addressing the housing needs of those people in some sort of a consistent way. So I think at your core, your community's housing base has to respond to the demographics of your community, or else they'll leave. They'll find housing elsewhere. And so once we know what those demographic groups are, where they're heading, the trends associated with each of those groups, then you can design housing products to meet those. What that ultimately does, in response to your point, Mr. Mejia, is that you create value by doing that. People are willing to pay more to get the product that they want. You know, if they're faced with, you know, choice after choice that's just the same single-family detached product, they're not going to be willing to pay a premium for that. They will pay a premium for a housing product that addresses their needs, that has the right amount of amenities, that fits into their lifestyle. And what you begin to find then, communities that are able to do that, is that they create value, almost like a value per acre for their housing base, that then helps offset all the service costs associated with that. So it really is, you know, I know we're talking a lot about balance between residential, balance between non-residential, but ultimately it comes down to how well does your community meet the housing needs of your residents? New residents, existing residents. And if you do that, you're going to create value. You won't have the service cost, net deficits that you find in a lot of communities.
Well, when you say you don't, if I could bring you some information, I would love to. Columbia, Maryland, if I'm not mistaken, they have an excellent community. I forgot the architect who did the whole assignment, and I'm using these numbers because they have $90,000 townhomes there, but they have $1 million homes there, and it's a whole, I'm gonna say a city or whatever you call it.
It is.
And they have the Columbia bike race. They have the Columbia clothing line. And he did it specifically so all different age groups can be within one city, and it's the only one across the nation that's done like that, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
and they took a very, simple concept. We're gonna create a community. We're gonna build a community with all the amenities.
Everything,
to a
stores.
multi-generational. We want people to live, work, play, shop in our community. And people respond to that.
We
People are
have
willing to
one
pay for that.
that's nearby as far as development, and that's his community over there that is just in the beginning stages.
Right.
That is going to be a multi-generational because they have the Clay Academy there, they have the church. They also are planning to have a nursing home there, assisted living, that will be a truly diverse type of thing. You've got Hometown over in North Richland Hills. They actually created a TIF in on that development, which then in turn paid for their new library, a lot of amenities downtown just from that housing area, plus they put a school in there that's state-of-the-art. And Hometown is a perfect example of apartments and everything, but it started out with some small homes and some large homes, but they all had the amenity. They had the walking trails, they had the open space within 900 feet of every home. So there are some places even right here.
You're
and-
misunderstanding me, I'm sorry. They do have the housing, and that's my church, Potter's House, and we do have that project started, but we stopped it for economical reasons, and we are gonna build on that. Not only do they have the housing and schools, but Columbia, Maryland has the shopping, they have the full spectrum, not just the housing limits, but they have everything. They have your pubs, they have your movie theater, they have, and everybody congregates. Every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you can see everybody. They have a place for the kids to have their birthday parties, their bar mitzvahs, and, I mean, they have everything you can imagine in one little town, and people come there. So, we do have the housing over there with Potter's
Well,
House,
it's
but we
gonna
don't have the
come.
shopping.
I know, but it's
Yeah.
gonna come. It's just like hometown. If you go over there and you saw it when it first started, it was a drainage ditch that they started out with, that they turned into a pond, which then they built all the housing around. But there was a shopping center that they have developed, and the shopping center that was right next to it spent money to redesign their parking lot so it could connect with the new shopping center that they were going to have to be able to create that flow, plus all the components that were there. So it takes time to develop. Frost Farms didn't happen, overnight.
Yeah.
And
So
once
it's-
again, I go back to the proposal. We have like untouched territory over here, and we can send this proposal out and go knock on doors, like we said, and we could sell it. We have uncharted territory here.
That's true.
Everybody would throw money at us to have it.
And
And have the first home or the first business that's gonna be mega.
Yeah, you guys should really be thinking of yourselves as city leaders, as master developers. That's, you've got this big chunk of property that is your community, and you get to plan it accordingly and, get to create the balance that's gonna create value for all your residents, so.
And that's the benefit of these scenarios. And I think that as we take what we heard from you this evening, I think we can come back with some of the best ideas from these scenarios in this direction that you've given us, understanding the balance that you're looking for, understanding the realities of how the market will react, where people want to live, and start to put that roadmap and be able to bring something back to you that shows how it's performing. And that's where we can fine tune it a little bit. So I know we've kept you a little longer than we promised. Are there any other key things that we've missed that ought to be a part of this scenario that, if you were painting a picture of it in words, what's the perfect scenario? Is there something else we should add to that, or have we covered it tonight?
Can I just play a little bit, just real quick?
Okay.
You know our golf course over here, I don't know how many people play golf, but if we wanna do these, huge homes, that's money, put them on a golf course, cause the people, we have great weather out here.
Yeah.
We have great weather out here in Texas. I'm loving golf. I could play 10 months out the year. I mean,
But we'll look for opportunities where there are amenities that are not in the floodplain to provide those housing types. Okay.
So much fun.
So at this point, it sounds like we've gotten a lot of good input.
I hope you did.
Yeah, I think we have what we need to move forward, Mayor.
No, I think there's just lots of really good discussion. We started out thinking the whole dialogue about the economy really needs to be the foundation as we look to things like housing and infrastructure. So I think we've got a lot to work with from your input this evening.
Okay, so I think that, thank you to you all, appreciate it. So if there's nothing else, I think we'll close out.
Okay.
Mayor, make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah,
I'm gonna
Chair,
let Keith
entertain a motion, please.
Madam Chair, I
Okay.
make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
I second the
from
motion, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Prothel, second for Commissioner Gregory. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Vote carries 5-0.
Mayor, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned at 8:52.
8:51.
8 minutes.